delicates.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of What the Trans?
What the Trans? Yeah, that's us. We're not going to do the singing thing. You might notice we're a presenter down. Flint is not with us, but they will be back in the next couple of weeks. He's been at a festival and needs some time to recover, which is entirely fair enough. So you've just got me and Alex for this one.
Yeah, stuck with us both. Mm-hmm. It's not like we haven't done this before, I suppose.
Indeed, yes. So how are you doing?
I'm doing well, slightly sleep deprived, but...
Yes, that's a mood.
Yeah, I think we've got some shared experience of that one today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for myself, it's mainly being too bloody hot. Given it's April, and I was probably complaining about it being too cold earlier on in another episode. I'm sure someone will clip it. You sort of just end up dying on your bed, going, "Oh, I want it to be cooler again."
I want it to be cooler. Yeah, you can't win, unfortunately, can you? Like, there's a fairly limited range of temperatures between which it's fine, and you can get under your covers, and you can, just snuggle up in your duvet, and if it's outside of that range of temperatures, you've either got to really wrap yourself up in the duvet or hold tight to the person you're sleeping with as you both snuggle up into the duvet, or it's boiling hot and you're using a sheet rather than a duvet, or neither if it gets that hot, as it once did in 2022 when it got to like 30 odd degrees in Manchester.
I think it got to 40 where I was.
Yeah, I seem to recall it got to 40 down on the south coast and in the south, which climate change, we used to call it global warming, but a bunch of lobbyists decided that was too scary, so they insisted it be called climate change, but it is global warming. So don't think of it as the hottest summer ever, think of it as the coldest summer for the rest of our lives.
Yes, I suppose while I was dying in heat, how have you been doing?
I am all right. I too am sleep deprived, but I often am these days. And honestly, if I was to recommend this sort of thing to people, I would say don't get a neurological condition. They are no fun at all, and it keeps me awake. I can't get comfortable, or I'll just suddenly wake up with a trying to think of a word for a sudden shock of pain. A shock.
Pain?
There we go. Oh, yeah, basically. And that suddenly wakes me up within the first sort of half an hour of my being asleep. And then because it's so painful, I need to be awake and reposition for it. And blah, blah, blah. It's this whole fucking thing. And it is incredibly frustrating. Because getting to sleep is one of the most basic things of human functionality, right?
Otherwise you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly. If you're bored, or you haven't got a great deal to do, or if you're really, really tired, you just go to sleep, right? It's a solution for so many problems, and I can't even fucking do that, and it is so frustrating. On a slightly more chipper note, you remember that thing where I went and did some archery and firing a crossbow?
Yes.
So that was for a Sten do / hag do, and that wedding has taken place. So I was a bridesmaid the weekend just gone as we record this, and it was lovely. It was at an old monastery up in Gorton, and the name, you'll never guess this, was Gorton Monastery.
Really?
Yeah, crazy stuff, right? And it was this beautiful space, and we all looked pretty splendid because Amy had 3 bridesmaids. Me, Lexi, and Nadia. And Kate had a bridesmaid and 2 bridesmen. Bridesmen? I don't know. Whatever.
Bridespeople?
It was just lovely. It was a lovely day, and I'm really glad that I was there and able to celebrate and be happy for my friends,
Yeah, definitely. Because you look great in those dresses as well. I saw the pictures on the What the Trans off topic chat.
Thank you. The long bridesmaid dress that we wore, they looked absolutely wonderful, and the other 2 were stood up in them and kind of flitting about the place with the skirts trailing behind them. But for me, I was in a wheelchair, and so several times over the course of the day, the very long dress got caught in my wheels. So I've actually, there are 2 holes in that dress now. So I might ask a seamstress friend of mine to make it shorter so I can wear it again, assuming I can still fit into it in a couple of weeks. It was a lovely occasion, and my first gay wedding, in fact, first one I'd been to.
Ah, nice. Yeah. Oh, but they're always great.
Yeah, I mean, most of my friends are like anarchists and stuff and don't want to get married specifically. And in the relationship I'm in, there's 3 of us, so who would marry who, you know?
Obviously, don't have the tax benefits, I suppose, but...
Yeah, quite. You know, marriage doesn't exist for more than 2 people, so...
Boo.
Boo! But yeah, I'm glad, and they are off on their honeymoon at this very moment, and I genuinely do wish them the best, and I look forward to seeing them again back at our roleplay game night.
Nice.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, you been doing anything good on that one recently?
Well, so there's an ongoing game of Vampire the Masquerade. Once that's finished, we're going to be playing some Triangle Agency, which I'm going to be GMing. The person who ran the Star Trek Adventures game is working on the kind of season 2 of that. So that'll be along at some point. This weekend, I've got some other friends coming over and we're going to play some Stargate SG-1.
SG-1, isn't that the TV show? Am I get?
It is indeed. It is, but there is a roleplay game of the TV show. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to play a no-nonsense military type person.
Just a good old stereotype.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I am nothing if not typecast. So, let's take a little stroll or a roll down Action Alley.
So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of actions. I suppose the first thing is we just need to check out our website. We've got a shit ton of actions, letters, petitions, fundraisers. We've got stuff for Trans Legal Clinic, and a specific organisation has appeared a couple times on this website, and it's the Trans Solidarity Alliance.
Yep.
Yes, so what they're going to be doing on the 25th of June is they're going to see how many trans people they can stuff inside of the Houses of Parliament and see how many people can speak to MPs as possible on one day on the 25th of June. I think it's just called the Mass Lobby, and they can really see what this trans lobby looks like, because they are always harping on about the big trans lobby, and, well, they get to see it in person.
Yeah, exactly. Also, the Good Law Project are looking for information as to how the Supreme Court's inexplicable decision has affected you. If the Supreme Court's judgment has affected you or your loved ones, fill out the secure form. Can't promise to take on every case, but we will consider them all and make sure you are not forgotten. So they are taking information from people who have been directly affected by the Supreme Court's judgment, and I can imagine that's quite a lot of us already. So yeah, if there's something that's happened to you because of that judgment, get hold of the Good Law Project.
Another really cool fundraiser project. There's a safe house for homeless and vulnerable trans people in Scotland that's doing a fundraiser. Its current goal is £5,000 in 6 months. Let's see if we can smash that and give them as much money as we physically can. So we'll share a link to the original post where this was, and then that'll give you the information to donate to that really worthy cause.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're not going to look after the most vulnerable members of our community, what's even the fucking point?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And speaking of things that you can find out about on our website, there are, of course, the ongoing protests regarding the Supreme Court's decision. There are a whole list of them. They are ongoing even now. There are more planned. I know there's one coming up in Manchester in the middle of next month, the 14th of June. If you're in Manchester, there will be a protest against the Supreme Court taking place, but that and many others are listed on our website, along with, as we've mentioned, a list of petitions and various other things other actions that you can take.
Yes, and if you have any actions that you want us to put on the website, get in touch and we'll certainly have a look for you.
Absolutement.
Yes. So now we've pretty much hopped around our website. I suppose it's time to hop the pond.
Yeah!
Pond hopping, we're hopping across the pond. How bad could it be?
Jingle, 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 jingle.
Indeed, and as we've seen over the past year and during the US presidential election, the Democratic Party and all their campaigning could at best be considered underwhelming, and back in previous episodes it was becoming increasingly clear that they were going to start taking a leaf out of the UK government's current approach to having a spine, and also when it came to having things like a conscience. So, for example, you could continually see the Democratic nominee Kamala Harris seek to refuse to do anything that remotely looked left-wing, and when trans rights came under attack from the Trump campaign, they chose to shy away from our defence. But in a recent interview with The Independent, Kamala Harris's running mate reflected on their loss in the election and said that when addressing the accusation of the Democrats selling out trans people, he said the following: "It's a mistake," he insisted. "And here's the thing. We need to tell people your cost of eggs, your healthcare being denied, and your homeowner's insurance, your lack of warning on tornadoes, and all that has nothing to do with someone's gender. And that we can protect LGBTQ rights and basic human rights at the same time, and we can make sure we hold drug companies accountable for high prices."
Yeah, so Tim Walz kind of saying the obvious, really, that, you know, all of these things that the Trump administration is doing have nothing to do with people who are trans, and that we shouldn't be left behind. And good, thank you. I'm glad somebody said it. I don't know how many people will listen.
No, exactly. It's kind of disappointing that we didn't originally see this in the election, because I think some people mentioned that Tim Walz was a bit muzzled at the times by not being able to say specific things. Like they decided for some reason, because I think I remember like a specific story of at the start of the election. Do you remember when they said Republicans are just a bit weird in some of their bits?
Yes.
And I think someone I noticed that they just stopped saying that after a while.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've learning the lessons from their loss on the election. They reflect on how standing up for trans people isn't going to lose you an election.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, there were quite a lot of things that Kamala Harris could have done that she just point blank refused to do because she seemed to be more interested in courting the Republican vote than an actual left-leaning vote. And I personally, from what I've read, it looks like Harris's tacit endorsement of the ongoing genocide in Gaza is something that might have tipped the scales for quite a lot of people. It's like, well, what are you for then if you're not going to try and do something about, or at least something about the massive amounts of weapons that America and the UK are supplying to Israel to drop on people in tents.
No, exactly, and it seems that our own government in the UK, I suppose to refer it back to the UK, is hell-bent on not taking note and charging straight towards whatever reform-esque thing is coming their way.
They're not learning any lessons, are they? And it's so obviously the wrong move.
Yeah, you can see where the polls are going, and you're like, oh, we tried the same thing, and it's failed. We're going to do that same thing even harder.
Well, did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but... but it might work for us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
And, I suppose when we've been seeing Starmer and everything saying about giving people dignity and respect, and trying to act like there's some kind of, caring for trans people, it reminds me of this next story. In the article we linked to in this episode, the writer of this decided to say that Spencer Cox was the rare Republican governor who seemed to truly care about the well-being of transgender kids. But from his actions, you would be at a loss to even say that with a straight face. Despite vetoing a bill in 2022 that banned trans kids from sports, he then proceeds to allow in bills that denied those trans kids healthcare in 2023. A ban which he said that people should treat our transgender families with more love and respect. Very respectful to remove access to life-saving healthcare measures. And with this ban, it also demanded a study to study the effects of puberty blockers and gender-affirming care. And 2 years later, this study has come back and Some of you may have expected that a bill in a Republican-led state would lead to a Cass-style result, and you may be quite surprised by these results, as in this study, its conclusions have said the following. The conventional wisdom among non-experts has been that there are limited data on gender-affirming paediatric care, and the authors wrote, however, results from our exhaustive literature searches have led us to the opposite conclusion. It added that it is our experts' opinion that policies to prevent access and use of gender-affirming hormone therapy for treatment of gender dysphoria in paediatric patients cannot be justified based on the quantity or quality of medical science findings or concerns about potential regret in the future, and that high-quality guidelines are available to guide qualified providers in treating paediatric patients who meet the diagnostic criteria. You may have thought that those who put this bill in place and made sure to get this study done would have accepted it. But no. Cognitive dissonance is one hell of a drug. One legislator, Bridger Belinda, that's an interesting name, dismissed the study's findings and said that we intend to keep the moratorium in place.
Yes. So they commissioned a whole ass study and then didn't like the results because the results said the opposite of what they wanted them to say, so they're just ignoring it. But like they've spent so long saying, oh, well, the science says that all of this trans stuff is experimental and there's not enough data on it, and we can't justify continuing to provide transgender healthcare on the basis that we don't know that it helps and we're fairly sure that it doesn't, and blah, 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 all of this anti-science kind of bullshit lobbying. And now the study that they commissioned has come back with the opposite of that and says that actually it does help and that trans healthcare does save lives and it does help people get on with their lives. And they don't like that result. So they just said, no, don't care, not interested.
Oh yeah, we need a study. Oh, I don't like that study.
You see, the thing is, you have spoken to the wrong expert. You've got to ask the right expert.
Yeah, right?
It's so obviously stupid, but you know it's obviously not stupidity. It's willful hatred.
Oh yeah. It's mendacity, yeah, for sure.
Like, they know that it was going to go that way. They just decided, fuck it, I don't like trans kids. I'm just going to ignore the study. So moving on from that one, back in the election, the Republicans kept claiming that healthcare matters should be decided by the states as part of their state-based rights. A term that, if folks remember, was an old excuse by racists to polish the turd that is the Confederacy's existence in the Civil War. But all of a sudden, that has been thrown out the window as in a recent new budget passed in the Republican-led House of Representatives in Washington, it has now banned Medicaid funding for gender-affirming care countrywide. In an amendment that came late Wednesday night, the ban originally stopped gender-affirming care for minors, but then it got changed to just be gender-affirming care, removing the access for all trans Americans.
This has been the game plan for a long time. So clearly, because if you start going after the healthcare of the young first, and then just by lopping out a few words in an amendment here, you can then, rather than saying access to gender-affirming care for minors, and then all you need to do is just delete that for minors, and you're denying access to all gender-affirming care for all trans Americans. And it's unconscionable, but equally, it was this exact outcome was being warned against for weeks. You know, what was it called? The One Big Beautiful Bill, they called it, the Republicans. And it was going to accomplish a lot of things, but mostly just give tax breaks to the ultra wealthy.
Yeah, and then wasn't it like take away healthcare benefits that weren't even just gender-affirming care? There was like disability benefits and...
Yes.
You know, all those things that marginalised communities needed. And when it comes to Medicaid ban, I just want to say that sort of, just for those who don't know the American medical system, Medicaid is sort of their version of national health insurance, isn't it?
Kind of. I mean, their whole system is very, very different.
Yeah, it's very different. But from what I can recall, it's like government funding for medical treatment. So Americans can in specific states can still get medical treatment. It's just that it's going to cost them a shit ton of money because it's the American healthcare system.
Yeah.
Essentially a ban, but
fuck them, right?
Yeah, the bastards. I mean, they knew the result and they decided to press the backspace button anyway.
Yeah. I mean, as far as they're concerned, I'm sure some of the true believers are absolutely convinced that trans people aren't even real, that we're just making it up. But we are, and we exist, and now a lifeline for American trans people has just been, gotten rid of.
Speaking of a backspace, I wish we could just do a backspace through all of the guidance from the next organisation.
Yes, indeed. So we're back across the Atlantic now, and we're going to, so this is some more updates from those festering ghouls over at the EHRC. So there's a few things this time. As we briefly mentioned on our last episode, our development was that the consultation period on the EHRC's interim guidance, and it was extended from 2 to 6 weeks. Now, we note that this isn't the standard 12-week period that they usually use, but we'll come back to that. In a statement, the EHRC said, quote, "In light of the level of public interest, as well as representations from stakeholders in Parliament and civil society, the consultation period has been extended. They've also made it very clear what they think the consultation should be about. They've said that the Supreme Court judgment, quote, made the legal position on the definition of sex clear, so the EHRC is not seeking views on those legal aspects, but will seek views on whether their planned updates, quote, clearly articulate the practical implications of the judgment and enable those who will use the code to understand and comply with the Equality Act 2010. So pay attention to how much they stress the clarity of the Supreme Court decision. Starmer, Streeting, cabinet ministers and party leaders have all welcomed the clarity of the decision, which has actually obfuscated equality law and made things less clear. I wonder if that's relevant in some way, deliberate almost, she said, foreshadowingly. So they're not doing a consultation about the legal aspects because they consider them to be settled with the Supreme Court ruling. Instead, the consultation is just to check the public's understanding of the proposed guidance. Dr. Cal Horton, who you may remember from our cast review deep dives, has written some commentary about all this, questioning the validity of participating in this at all, given the narrow parameters of what they're asking for, and we'll include a link to that commentary in the usual place. But the fun doesn't stop there, because this isn't the only thing that the EHRC have been talking about over the last couple of weeks. They also made a very helpful suggestion that someone's birth certificate could be checked by sports clubs or hospitals when there's doubt over their biological sex. They put it like this: when there is, quote, genuine concern about the accuracy of the response to a question about birth sex, then a birth certificate could be requested. Now, I'm not sure if anyone's mentioned to them that the Gender Recognition Act allows a trans person to request a new birth certificate in their acquired gender, but do you see what I mean about things being less clear? Well, it turns out that is actually very deliberate. On May 23rd, the Trans Advocacy and Complaints Collective, or TAC, revealed that they'd submitted a number of Freedom of Information requests to the EHRC, which showed that a number of high-level meetings took place between leaders of the EHRC and the leaders of Sex Matters back in September last year. The meeting, attended by both Baroness Faulkner, current head of the EHRC, and Maya Forstater, who is the current head of Sex Matters, was more of a policy briefing where Sex Matters outlined their vision for stripping away the rights of trans people, and the EHRC eagerly jumping to grab it like a dog for a thrown stick.
Like, if Stonewall did it, this kind of policy briefing...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It would be a fucking...
Well, hold that thought, because there will be discussion afterwards, so... A few days after the meeting, Forstater followed up by email to Faulkner. Attached to this email was a draft version of the 2010 EHRC Code of Practice, which Forstater claimed was superior to the published version. I'm not going to go through every single difference and change here. I would strongly recommend that you read the TAC press release for that, but I'll give you a short version which I have cribbed directly from TAC. They've said the changes focused on 4 aspects. Quote, attached guidance. Force Data promotes a version of the code that explicitly strips away the interpretive protections that trans people currently rely on. Polling, used to claim public support for excluding trans-identifying males from women's services and sport, arguing for clear language based on widespread confusion. Case law cites selected legal cases to portray trans inclusion as a legal risk. Sport presents a report from Fair Play for Women warning of intimidation and the erosion of genuinely single-sex spaces due to trans inclusion. The tone is urgent, partisan, and presumptive. Forstedter does not just offer views, she proposes policy language, legal interpretation, and even drafts for guidance. End quote. Sound familiar? Yep, rings a few bells for us too. Tack goes on to say, quote, sex matter's core rhetorical device is manufactured confusion. Confusion about language, people don't understand what a trans woman is. Confusion about the law, recasting EHRC guidance as misleading. Confusion about safety, suggesting trans presence equals a danger in services and sport. Their solution is to impose fixed biological definitions and push out trans people, particularly trans women, from protections they currently enjoy. But this isn't legal clarity. It's erasure dressed as policy reform. End quote.
Oh god, the EHRC's just been a complete mess, and this guidance has just been, well, it's discriminatory, it's weaponised that confusion, and I think one particular focus that I was thinking just as you were reading all of this together is how Sex Matters somehow had this amount of access to the EHRC when I've been speaking to insiders from other organisations, there's just been outright refusal to meet with trans orgs at times, or like obscure access. So it's like they request an email to say, hey, can we have a meeting with Faulkner? And then it's just ignored and they pretend it sort of didn't come.
I see.
Meanwhile, they're going to parties with Sex Matters, and if Stonewall had this same sort of access that Sex Matters did, put these demands out and had Kishwa Faulkner on a freaking
on speed dial,
there'd be a fucking bloodbath.
Yes.
In the press.
Yeah, exactly. But just it kind of makes so much sense now because they've all said, like Ed Davies said it, Keir Starmer, Wes Streeting, they've all said, oh, well, the Supreme Court gave us clarity, and it's done the opposite. But that's been Sex Matters' whole, their whole line of attack is saying, oh, well, it makes things clearer, and now people know what the law is, when it's actually done the opposite. They're literally doing doublethink, right? A guy wrote a whole book about this.
When you see clarity, just think of a dog whistle at this point.
Oh, yeah, particularly when it's said by somebody like Sex Matters or Fair Play for Women or whatever. When they're celebrating clarity, they're celebrating a win for them.
No, exactly. It's just, they're like, oh, we won. You know, we need to make the EHRC feel a loss, and I suppose something that we couldn't quite put in Loser's Corner, but we would have put in Loser's Corner, but I would have had to do a whole write-up. But there was a whole occupation of the EHRC offices in Glasgow and London.
Yes, indeed.
Last week.
Yes, indeed. By our favourite intrepid insurrectionists. Trans kids deserve better.
Yes, so they camped out at the Glasgow office, the London office, and there was like a whole big situation in the Glasgow office where about an hour into them standing on a balcony of the Glasgow office, the police managed to get to them and rip them out of the building and bundle them into police vans and arrest them very violently.
Yeah.
Oh, look, here's some good press. Tackling trans teenagers to the floor.
Yeah, with like an unnecessary amount of violence. And I mean, again, that's what the cops are for, right? If you need somebody to do a violence, that's when you get the police in, right?
No, exactly. Yeah, as of time of recording, it's a Thursday, and the kids are supposed to be coming down tomorrow from the one in London, which fortunately has been a lot less eventful. Police have sort of come up and were like,
what's all this in?
Oh, what you doing? Is everyone got the appropriate Is this all? I mean, how's the building management dealing with it? Did they have tents? Did they have warm weather clothing? But that was sort of the most they got
I see.
from the police, and there was no threats of removal. The only arseholes were the actual building management, because they kept trying to threaten legal action against them to evict them from the office, despite them being there for a limited amount of time, and then calling the police at every opportunity to try and say, look, so for example, there was a flag barely dangling nearby to a door, and they weren't happy with how close it was to a particular door, saying it was fire safety, and then called the police over it on one instance.
I see.
But of course, it's the EHRC building, so they were probably worried if they as much as glanced at a trans kid, they'd fucking melt.
Yeah. Oh, well, if we acknowledge the existence of young trans people, we'll burst into flames. I just wonder how people who work for the EHRC now, who you've got to imagine, particularly those that might have been there for a good while, they got into it because they care about equality and they want to work in the equality space, right? And the thing that they work for has been so completely hijacked by this hateful ideology. And it's not what it was, and it can't possibly be what it was while Faulkner is in charge of it, and while they've got people like Alistair Henderson on the board.
Yeah, Akua Reindorf, who we've seen, because the thing about Akua Reindorf is I've caught her on camera at the LGB Alliance conference wearing a tote bag with Labour's Women's Declaration on it. You don't see an EHRC commissioner floating that kind of merchandise around for any other pro-trans organisation whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And there would be some kind of fucking outrage.
Yeah.
One other quick story is next week, as a time of, I think, release on the Monday, there's going to be a really interesting questioning of the EHRC commissioners and Faulkner by the Women and Equalities Committee in Parliament on June the 11th. So that's going to be one we're going to have to get our popcorn out for, especially given their letter, which, if people remember the last episode.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, they wrote a letter to specifically to Baroness Faulkner. They asked her some questions like, do you really think 2 weeks is long enough for a consultation? Which that element of it has been addressed, of course, but there were several other points in this letter. So the Women and Equalities Committee do look like they're still concerned about equalities, so that's nice. But we shall see, because it's this Labour government, which is basically a continuation of the preceding Tory government.
Just keep writing into your MPs, and especially if they're on a Women and Equalities Committee.
Yes.
Because that'll be really important. And I suppose the last thing, for if we're ever going to talk about the EHRC, is their consultation. It's still ongoing till the 30th of June.
Yep.
So when we get the transactional consultation guide, we'll share that out on our socials, and we make sure to mention the pod if it comes out during a pod time. And also, I think I mentioned this on the social medias lately, but when you do, take your time doing the consultation. Make sure you submit it a bit last minute, because if you can get it the last week or a couple of days before it ends. We hear Faulkner's wanting to get this consultation out before she's given the boot, and also before the next parliamentary summer recess.
Yes.
So if you submitted it at the start of the 6 weeks, it gives them more time to go through the responses, because they can go through the responses as a consultation runs. But if you do it
right
at the end, they haven't got no time to process it, and they've still got to go through it. And if you've given a shit ton of responses, they'll have to read it. And who knows, maybe we can cause enough disruption to make them have to submit it after Faulkner gets booted.
Yep.
And then have to reconsider.
Anything to put a spanner in the works for them at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not, just to clarify, we're not the only organisation saying that submitting towards the end is a good move, strategically. Transactual have said that, and a couple of other places. We're just going along with it. But it does make sense for it to kind of try and overwhelm it right at the end of the consultation time.
Fun days.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of consequences from the EHRC's discriminatory guidance, someone's taken a leaf out of it, and in this case, it's Holyrood, or the devolved legislative Parliament building.
The devolved legislation Parliament building, where?
In Scotland.
There we go.
We'll keep that in. Why not? Yeah, so following their announcement of their toilet ban, the ban became really widely condemned, and it seems the Scottish parliamentary corporate ban will not monitor the use of facilities, and no one will be required to provide a birth certificate or other paperwork. So a ban that is not going to be enforced. So if you're in the Scottish Parliament and you were challenged, you can channel your inner Theoden and say, you have no power here.
Like, this was good to see. Like, not everybody governmentally is on board with the EHRC's bullshit, I think. So the Holyrood police have said, fuck you, make me.
They made the guidance, and then they had to make the strange walk back because it was originally out there. They were going to leave it out and proud. Westminster didn't follow suit to do the same thing, so they looked out of step with the UK government as well, which probably didn't help instead of that bit as well.
Yeah.
So, and also Scotland's legislative members of Parliament, the MSPs, always. With the Scotland and the Scottish Greens, always are very vocal in the parliamentary body, and there was like a whole debate regarding this guidance as well.
Yeah.
So it put enough of a spotlight that they realised it was really bad, and then hopefully, as well as saying they're not going to monitor it, eventually they'll scrap it, but we're going to have to see, so keep on the pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on then, let's talk about a union. The PCS union, which is the one that mostly represents civil servants, had a major conference recently, its annual Delegates Conference, or the ADC. The conference was held in Brighton from May 20th to the 22nd, with most of the actual conference-y stuff happening on those last 2 days. One motion proposed for debate at the conference really caught our eye, Motion A57, which was going to call for the conference to reject biological essentialism, oppose trans-segregation, reject the caste review, and to explore possible legal challenges to segregationist guidance. And those were just the highlights. The full motion was like a page and a half long, covering points raised across multiple trans-supportive motions. We looked at this and we quietly hoped for a slam dunk of a news story. But shortly before the conference, the union's top brass started acting strangely. On May 17th, a note was issued to delegates insisting that trans people at the conference should only use gender-neutral toilets. Bizarrely, the reasoning given was partly based on building regulations, which kinda smells like bullshit to us. Then on May 20th, it was announced that the trans-supportive Motion A57 would be excluded, based on legal advice received that same morning. It wouldn't be the only motion removed either. Ultimately, a total of 25 motions were thrown out, the majority of which related to trans rights. For context, last year's ADC only saw 3 motions removed this way, making this year's 25 seem pretty exceptional. There were attempts to reinstate Motion A57, culminating in a card vote where over 49,000 delegates voted against the decision to remove it, but that wasn't enough to overcome the roughly 72,000 votes of those willing to accept A57's removal. The card vote had roughly 4,000 abstentions. Trans rights protests were held outside the conference, calling out the discriminatory bathroom policy and the way in which members have been silenced. And the groups PCS Proud and PCS Independent Left have both written about the concerning way the conference was managed, and we'll provide links to that stuff in the usual place, of course. Even though the conference was a disappointment, the silver lining here is that a significant proportion of the union's membership is supportive of trans rights. Those 49,000 people are a big crowd, and a lot of people are willing to put in the work to try and make the union support trans rights. So, good. Excellent. Could have gone better, but, you know.
That's more of a reason that you got 49,000 people. Let's make as much disruption and chaos inside of the PCS union to force them to be not dicks to trans people.
I mean, it was so obvious they were just silencing all the trans ones, though. Like, removing 25 different motions.
Especially considering the gigantic contrast of only 3 the previous year.
Yeah, exactly. And so all the trans ones, no, we're just going to delete those. I'd be interested to hear what their rationale for deleting them was. It's like, do they think, oh, well, we have anything to do with trans rights, we're going to end up in conflict with the Supreme Court? Is it we want to toe the line with the government? Are they complying in advance?
And also, if they're a democratic association, shouldn't the legal advice that they'd received be freely made available to the membership to say whether they think the legal advice is bullshit or not?
Well, quite. Because, in the PCS, in the civil service, there's quite a few people who have some legal knowledge themselves. So where did this legal advice come from? Who gave it? And yeah, so there's some pretty valid questions, but we don't know the answers to them. So
yeah, I suppose we'll have to see what more activists probe through when they go through it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. And the top brass in PCS, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's ultimately their decision and they decided to stick to their guns.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, moving on.
And yet again, more Supreme Court bullshit. 18 of the UN's human rights experts have issued a joint statement expressing concern over the implications of the UK Supreme Court ruling, saying the judgment may be used to justify exclusionary policies that further stigmatise and marginalise an already vulnerable populations. The experts also warned that the application of the ruling and its interpretation in the EHRC's interim update could ultimately leave trans people with no safe access to facilities. Such a situation could lead to the UK being in violation of the European Convention on Human Rights, like it was before the creation of the Gender Recognition Act in 2004. The UN human rights experts closed their statement saying the law must be clear, coherent and consistent with international human rights standards, and that we urge UK lawmakers to act decisively to reform and align the legal framework in a way that ensures dignity, equality and non-discrimination for all. Right on.
You kind of want them to get a little bit more involved, don't you? Because they had the opportunity to downgrade the EHRC's...
Yeah, in GANRI, wasn't it?
GANRI, yeah, the Global Association of National Human Rights Institutions. I'm amazed I remembered that acronym.
Oh, that's what it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, GANRI.
And you don't think the acronym's just a little clunky?
I know, it was quite catchy.
They had the opportunity to downgrade the EHRC, and they didn't. So they kind of said, no, everything's fine. And I think the people responsible for that decision probably regret that now.
Yeah, I think, didn't we see that a month after they refused to downgrade, the UK government donated a fat check to GANRI?
Probably.
We'll have to doubt whether they regret taking a wad of money from the UK government to just quietly keep that bit quiet, if that's what some people might consider on that particular front.
Yes, indeed.
And talking of twats who give wads of money out.
Well, yes, good segue. So we're going to talk about someone who doesn't really come up in the news for us as often as you might think. J.K. Rowling. Generally, we have a no grifters rule, which is why we don't cover people like Graham Linehan or Kelly J. Keane very often either, and with her recent quote-unquote activism, Rowling falls squarely into that camp. Now, however, she's openly using her obscene wealth to directly funnel money to anti-trans causes. We knew that she was doing this already to some extent. The For Women Scotland case at the Supreme Court was sponsored by Rowling to the tune of £70,000. But now there's a whole organisation in place to put her money where a hate group's mouth is. The organisation name is as derivative as her novels, the J.K. Rowling Women's Fund. According to the website, it, quote, offers legal funding support to individuals and organisations fighting to retain women's sex-based rights in the workplace, in public life, in protected female spaces. You'll have heard the term women's sex-based rights before. It's a dog whistle that anti-trans activists use so they don't have to say stuff like strip trans people of legal protection when they're talking about their work and their ambitions. So just to clarify, it is way past time for people who like Harry Potter to critically examine that. Any financial support of Rowling is now directly funding transphobia and legal efforts to further bully and disenfranchise trans people. While the best time to re-examine your enjoyment of it was months and months ago, the second best time is now. And just real quick before we finish up, actor Pedro Pascal has again demonstrated he's pretty awesome about trans rights. Pascal, whose sister Lux is trans, bit back on a photo Rowling shared after the Supreme Court ruling, which showed her on her yacht smoking a cigar with the caption, "I love it when a plan comes together." In response, Pascal called it some Voldemort villain shit and called Rowling a heinous loser. So good guy, Pedro Pascal. You love to see that at least not everybody hates us.
I want to make sure to also point out, when we're thinking of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, think of Warner Brothers. Associate anything that Warner Brothers does regarding the new Harry Potter series, they're complicit, they're enabling it, they're allowing money to be funneled towards this anti-trans fund, regardless of how they put it in a bank. Money's going to J.K. Rowling, and that means that they're enabling this shit.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly.
make sure they don't get out of it either by letting people point directly at J.K. Rowling. They shouldn't get out of it either.
Yeah, no, very true, you're right.
To be honest, I think every time I've been seeing protests or people talk about it, I'm like, what would probably piss her off more is not mentioning her name, but specifically pointing to Warner Brothers, or like something that isn't J.K. Rowling, because she is there for the attention now.
Yeah, for
she's
sure.
doubling down, but Warner Brothers, they might want to stay out the firing line a bit.
True. Well, it's this new series that's coming up is on HBO as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And if you people were quite good at associating Hogwarts Legacy with transphobia. It's probably the same with that series, I suppose, isn't it?
I mean, we can but hope. I mean, although I do just want to say, like, the three kids they've got to play the three main leads, like, this is not an excuse or carte blanche to go and bully those kids on social media, right?
Oh, God, don't do that.
They absolutely do not do that. They've stepped into something and they've no idea what it is, and they've no idea of the feeling that people have about it, but that is not an excuse for you to go and bully kids, so don't fucking do that, all right?
No, don't do that. And this is not some kind of, don't definitely do that. It's don't do that.
Yeah.
This is not a joke. Do not be that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, on May the 22nd, the National Police Chiefs Council, or NPCC, announced that, given the implications for the Supreme Court ruling on the Equality Act, it had drafted interim guidance on searching trans people. The guidance stated that searches must be conducted with officers of the same biological sex as the person being searched. However, it's not the Equality Act that governs how police can search people. It's actually a different law entirely, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, or PACE. It didn't get reinterpreted by the Supreme Court. In fact, the judgment doesn't even fucking mention it. PACE,
the final frontier,
and specifically Code C, Annex L, tells police to treat trans people as the gender they consider themselves to be. Obviously, the law has its technicalities and exceptions, but that's a fair position to start from when it comes to police. The NPCC's new interim guidance, however, suggests that if a trans person's gender is to be respected during a search, then at least... What? Then at least 3 signatures are now required. What? So the person being searched, the officers conducting the search, and the officer authorising the search should now all provide written consent. So we asked NPCC for a comment on all this, and they said, PACE Annex L provides guidance on establishing gender of persons for the purpose of searching, and it is therefore still applicable. With respect to searching a transgender detainee, they can request an officer of their lived gender. However, this is now relying on this officer agreeing to the search. If an officer cannot be found, the search will be completed in line with biological sex. Basically, this interim policy exists to allow officers to opt out of searching trans people because TERFs think trans bodies are scary. The interim policy is an example of the contradiction caused by the court ruling where the trans people's sex is different depending on which law is cited, and it's an example of interpretations creeping beyond what was outlined in the court. What the fucking fuck is this shit? 3 fucking signatures?
And I'm just surprised they get...
Well, the need for a signature.
They need the signature of the person they're searching, and surely if the person doesn't give a signature or refuses to, can they then not do a search? Because that doesn't sound likely, you know? Just to point out, this does overlap with the previous coverage from the last episode about the British Transport Police. We're still waiting for a statement from the British Transport Police, but we've not had one from them yet. Don't think we will, but just putting it out there, we got in touch with them. And they didn't get in touch. You know, they didn't get back to us. Like, if you want to try and justify your position, surely you talk about it, but they've just chosen to ignore us.
Part of this whole thing about strip searching, this whole culture war thing that the gender criticals seem to put, I always think strip searches are inherently a violent act in its own right.
Yes.
It's invasive, it's unnecessary, and we've seen instances of police misusing this to abuse younger people in a way that was just utterly violent. And why should they shouldn't be strip searches in the first place?
Yeah.
Just full stop. I just need to address that. Especially when it adversely affects marginalised communities more. People of colour, disabled people, in this case trans people, and all those communities that just get affected by strip searches and searches in general disproportionately. Strip searches just shouldn't happen.
Pretty much. I mean, in an ideal world, the police wouldn't exist, but then that's a whole other ballpark and conversation, and we will put a pin in that and come back to it later.
And there's also a nice bit of resistance as well. So on the 24th of May, there was a gigantic protest inside Liverpool Street Station in London regarding the Transport Police's own guidance on strip searches, and we made a little thread which we'll link below with some of the footage of this and sticking it to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So great to see resistance.
Hell yeah. So, you'll be pleased to hear, dear listener, that we've gotten through the depressing stuff of this episode. Up next, we've got Loser's Corner, then we've got some trans joy, and then we're done. Okay. Woo! All right. It's Loser's Corner, baby! Loser's Corner!
Loser's Corner. Loser's Corner.
Yes. A transphobic teacher from Nottinghamshire who was sacked in 2022 for being a fucking creep has recently lost her legal challenge on the matter. The school where she worked was aware of her transphobic views, and whilst she was employed, every effort was made to keep her away from a trans pupil. The teacher was busy spouting off to staff about sex being mandated by God and stuff, so the school made sure a trans pupil, known to the court as Child X, was not in her class, and the school put the teacher on temporary suspension whilst they tried to figure something out. The school did not want the teacher to misgender or dead name Child X, or for the teacher to otherwise cause a GDPR problem. Once the teacher was allowed back to school, she soon started to make unauthorized access to the safeguarding information of Child X. The teacher was accessing Child X's information sometimes multiple times a week, over several months, and was copying information to her personal computer. All of this unauthorized, all for a child not in her class that the school specifically wanted her to stay away from. So that's extremely sackable behaviour. The court described this behaviour as unjustified and as deliberate surveillance, and this was one of several reasons the teacher's claim was dismissed. The court found the teacher was not harassed or discriminated against for being religious or anti-trans, and that the teacher was not unfairly dismissed. Les who, they her. Also, a neat thing to point out is that everyone in this case has been anonymised indefinitely in order to protect the safety and privacy of Child X as a trans person. In the words of the judge, the right for X to live a life in their chosen gender identity for the rest of their life prevails over the claimant's Article 6 and 10 rights. Or, as I might put it, trans people should have a right to privacy for life and bigots can shut up and die mad about it.
Bloody hell. I mean, now I've seen it all in just that list.
Yeah.
And then you saw that the BBC article simply put teacher sacked for using child's pronouns.
That's not what was happening, BBC News.
Teacher sacked for accessing sensitive safeguarding information they had no right to is the proper fucking headline.
Yes. But no, BBC and LBC both said it was to do with pronouns. And the headline made it seem that the trans pupil was the one being unreasonable and kind of insisting on getting this person sacked, when actually it was very much their own actions. Well, if it isn't the consequences of the things I've done.
Like, why would you need to copy personal information about a child you're teaching onto your own personal computer? That's
obsession.
I think it's worse than obsession. It's a safeguarding risk. I mean, they're always talking about safeguarding of trans kids. We need to safeguard trans kids from creeps like this arsehole.
Yeah, quite.
Honestly. Ugh.
It's just gross, isn't it? But yeah, when I first read this story, it just made me angry, really. Although, well done to the school for kind of doing what they did in terms of scheduling, keeping them away from each other. And well done to them for kind of standing by their guns and saying, no, you are fired, and here is why, you massive fucking creep.
Admire the kid for the bloomin' patience and the bravery to deal with this arsehole.
I mean, that shouldn't have to be a thing that we're commenting.
Shouldn't have to be a thing, yeah.
But yeah, you're quite right. Anyway, okay, so we have another meatless episode this week.
No meat! Big feet!
There are a few reasons for this, which we will explain over the next few weeks. We do have some good stuff coming up. We're planning, we're plotting, thou plottest. But just for this week and last week, it's going to be a slightly shorter episode. So yeah, go and listen to another podcast or some music or something. Go listen to some St. Lucifer.
But not yet.
But not yet, because first, let's talk about some joy.
Yes, non-depressing shit.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I suppose if you're one for watching television, or more specifically the BBC, there's a new drama coming out, What It Feels Like for a Girl, and it's an 8-part adaptation of a memoir of the same name by trans author and activist Paris Lees, discovering oneself in the 2000s clubbing scenes. It's by no means an easy ride, but it looks to be a colourful and chaotic and crucially queer bit of media. Plus, it's named after a Madonna song, so I'm hoping the soundtrack will be decent enough that we can get it into the groove.
No, so we can all get into the groove, because that's the name of another Madonna song.
It'll be decent enough that we can all get into the groove. Ahead of its release, the show has been described as both shocking and humanising, but I'm encouraged by this statement from lead actor Ellis Howard. Trans people will exist beyond this political moment we're in now, and if we can provide some relief in the moment, then Merry fucking Christmas.
Yeah.
That's the most satisfying quote I've ever read out in this podcast.
Yeah, it's a good one. When I first read that, I was like, hey, what? Is it only coming out at Christmas? But no, it's going to be on BBC Three and on iPlayer from June the 3rd. So,
straight ready for Pride Month.
Yep.
Or Pride season, because it's gone beyond a month at this point.
It's Pride season for us, isn't it? Yeah.
But I recently saw a documentary where you get some Pride events in January and going all the way through the year, so Pride never ends.
Okay, that's fair. Every season is Pride season. Sir Ian McKellen is to open up an all-trans and non-binary rehearsed reading of Twelfth Night. That'll be one to keep an eye on. One of the last times I went to the theatre to watch something was I went to the theatre I used to be involved with, Wigan Little Theatre, and they were doing Twelfth Night. So, This will be interesting. I know there's a lot of people who kind of can't get away from how Shakespeare is taught to you at school, which is like usually really fucking boring and repetitive. But like, you can move past that. It's all right. There's some good stuff in there, which is why it's still around.
Fuck yeah, Gandalf.
Okay, can I talk about the singer?
Go on then.
Okay, so there is a singer called Beth McCarthy. McCarthy is herself bisexual. She's a singer-songwriter. Her songs celebrate queerness, and she had a trans fan at the very front of her show request saying, can you give me a new name? Can you tell me a new name? Right. And there's a video of this moment, and it's beautiful, right? So McCarthy asks to hold the fan's hand and then says, I think the name Luna is really beautiful. And the crowd goes crazy, and Luna's jaw drops with excitement. She looks so excited. McCarthy says, I was going to save it for me having a kid, but I actually think you look beautiful, and honestly, you shine like the moon. Would you like to be called Luna? And Luna is just so delighted. You can see it on her face. She's overcome, and it's just a beautiful little moment. I've kind of just described the whole thing to you, really, but it's really lovely to see. So would recommend, check that one out. It's on the TikToks.
On the TikToks, yes.
Yep.
Short form video content. Some people have some really good stories about how they got their name.
Yes.
But this person's won. There wasn't a competition, but they've won it.
Yeah, oh for sure. Yeah, they've got the coolest how did you choose your name story ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I just got mine from a fucking video game.
I'm trying to remember how I got mine, actually. So there is a story, but it's not a story I tell publicly. So, yeah, you just have to carry on guessing.
Yes, keep that mystery going.
Yeah. So we've got another few little bits of trans joy. Shauneens, she, her, said, today I went for my first bra fitting at an M&S. I was terrified it might be awkward with the Supreme Court situation, etc., but it was straightforward and hassle-free, and now I have something proper to wear and support. And I went for a bra fitting at an M&S a couple of weeks ago before getting a bra in the right colour of the bridesmaid dress I was wearing, and yeah, they were really good. They were really nice about it. Getting a bra fitting can be an empowering experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just, at your M&S, they're just normal people. They're not these weirdos from Sex Matters.
Yep.
They're just normal people, and yeah, just you need to go about your day.
Pretty much. I mean, the idea is you're going in there for a bra fitting because you want to spend money in their shop. So why are they going to be a dick about it?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so what else do we have?
Some more gender-affirming stuff. Rachel started the HRT today.
Woo!
Woo, congrats on that one.
Yeah, well done. Go on, take the next one.
So Hazleigh spoke with her local Pride organisers. It went very well. It felt very grassroots. And even though she's the only trans voice involved so far, they were very accepting and listened to her concerns. And she's volunteered to do some really cool things. And she's now done some posters. She's going to be doing some photography. And she found it really nice to be building connections locally.
And Ellie said that she's been practicing her stitching to mend her clothes. Today and yesterday, I was working on a skirt that I got a long bit ago from a charity shop that was too big around the waist for me. I cut out sections on either side all the way down and then stitched them back using a one straight stitch on the sewing machine and the securing tops that were too thick for the sewing machine, and didn't have enough fabric to make them a hem using a ladder stitch. It just turned out a lot better than I expected. So yeah, well done. I mean, there are a bunch of words that I just read out then in terms of actually describing the stitching that I didn't really understand, but abso-fucking-lutely, you do you.
Hell yeah.
Mend your clothes.
Hell yeah. The mark of a good reader is when you can read out a techno-babble and it sounds like you know what you're talking about. Amber, put that clip of the person who's doing that techno-babble, that electrical equipment, that meme.
With customer success as our primary focus, work has been proceeding on the crudely conceived idea of an instrument that would not only provide inverse reactive current for use in unilateral phase detractors, but would also be capable of automatically synchronizing cardinal gram meters.
All right. That's all we've got for you this week. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending some of your day with us. Hope you found it illuminating and right at the end there, uplifting. So you look after yourselves, look after each other, stay safe. We love you, and we'll speak to you next time.
See you later. Bye. Bye. This episode of What the Trans was produced and presented by Ashleigh and Alyx and written by Sammy, Ashleigh and Alyx. It was edited by Amber Roberts and Amber Devro, and our opening theme music was composed by Warwitzara Yui Karlberg. Our episode thumbnail was produced by Polar Appears and transcription performed by Sam Ryman, Rowan B, Rachel Aldred and George Griffiths. And we would especially like to thank our producer level patrons who are Chumi,
Zoe B,
Michael Jarjor,
Danielle Hardwick,
Ocean.
Mel,
Heather Patterson.
Brianne O'Neill,
Toby.
Gorstar,
Susan K. Quinn.
Undead Nafa,
Ellie S.
Bex, the Mermaid,
Brian Goss.
Hazel Dust,
Laura, Seed of... Sorry, I'll say that again. Laura, Queen of Seagulls.
Becky Cheadle,
Jordan Starr.
Lee Downs,
Lindsay Cannon.
George Simmons,
Carly Silvers.
B Squared,
Smiley, friend of Candy from across the pond.
The Socialist Party of Great Britain, 1904,
Sarah.
Eris,
Tin Ruth.
Naystrom,
Lex Phoenix.
picked the wrong week to start transing my gender,
Never the wrong week. Andrea Brooks.
Jack Edwards,
Stephen Blakemore.
Now Art,
Needles and Freds.
Flaming Daphne,
Dr. McGee.
Jen,
Katie Reynolds.
Georgia Holden Burnett,
Grabalicious.
Mux Afon,
Route -1.
Gray,
Beth Anderson.
Bernice Roust,
Ellen Meller.
Jay Hoskins,
Trowan.
Ashley,
Setcab.
Jane,
Roberto DePrunk.
Rose Absolute,
Sarah.
Cena,
Kiki T.
D,
Sky Killane.
Eric Whitman,
B.
Monsieur Squirrel,
Fergus Evans.
Anubis a Jackal,
Brandon Craig.
Break the System,
Sean Phillips.
Heidi Rian,
Lentil.
Clara Volumi,
Amelia.
Samantha Raven,
Tabitha Joe Cox, aka Candy.
Fiona McDonald,
Murgatroyd.
Ontologically Unjust,
Stella.
Cindergossa,
Rebecca Prentice.
EAKs, Crazy Richard,
Dan Oblivion.
Helen _
L. Gray.
Melody Nix,
Fiona Punchard.
John,
CB Bailey.
Gordon Cameron,
Ted Delphos.
Kai Lewin,
Vic Parsons.
Patreon user,
Vic Kelly.
Catherine,
Sabrina McVeigh.
Cassius Adair,
Melissa Brooks.
Karakan 12,
April Heller.
Sophie Lewis,
Alexandra Lilly.
Claire Scott,
Aradne Pena.
Lauren O'Nions,
Bernard Pig Chili Bean.
and Lanos. Thank you all
for
so
watching.
much.
Bye. Gosh, that was a lot longer with only two people doing it.